Test.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Kuya Paul. Yeah, it's kind of noisy here. I'm actually doing this outdoors. But welcome to my new podcasts. I actually don't have a name for it. Maybe I'm looking for a name. But right now, it's just gonna be a part of KP conversations, maybe even KP commentary, anything with a K or anything that's a C that I can convert into the K. You know, like the stuff I've been doing, like KP creations with a K, KP commentary, KP collaborations was one. There's a couple others. Just can't think of them all. Anyway, yeah, this is my newly formed podcast. I am doing it for a couple reasons. Number one, I've been doing the CLI podcast for quite a while, actually. And I've been having a really good time doing it. A lot of you guys have been telling me, either online or in person, that you've really enjoyed those podcasts, and I really enjoy hearing about that as well too. You've been enjoying all the different things I've been talking about, art, about my creation of my book. So I figured, why not continue on with more podcasts, more content, just stuff that hopefully you'll also enjoy coming from me. And this will be a little bit more of my ramblings. It's going to be a little bit more topical as well too. So they're going to be topical ramblings. That's like an oxymoron, isn't it? You can have ramblings but be topical, but I guess you could have both. I mean, it's me. It's Kuya Paul. So Kuya Paul can have both ramblings and topics. But yeah, that's what it's going to be. And I plan on focusing on just different things that I like, different things that are going on in my life. I am planning to do some other stuff in terms of like video content as well too. I do want to do like a top 10 list like I did before. I did one top 10. I forget when, like I did, two top 10s. I did one where, how can you tell if your church is hipster? But that was a while back. And then I did, I'm trying to remember the other one. I did a top 10 list on my blog, which is found on WordPress, kuyapolpoetry.wordpress.com, where I talked about the top 5 reasons why you should, quote-unquote, stop going to church. And it's not what you think. They're interesting topics. You should read it. You can still find it on my WordPress site. Top 5 reasons why you should stop going to church and start being the church. What? Wordplay like that. But anyway, this particular podcast is going to be a little bit more topical. I'm going to be focusing on every type of topic you could probably think of, coming from the very nerdy, geeky, gospel-y, artistically motivated brain of mine. And each topic will be different. I may have certain themed weeks or things like that as well too. We'll just see where it goes. In any event, let me see. I have a list. You can't see it, but I have a list. Here's the paper. It's can you hear the paper? There. So yeah, that's my list. It's a list of things I'm actually going to be talking about in the podcast. I'm actually going to be focusing on one topic that has been very closely dear to my heart recently, and it is interesting because I think it's going to bring up a lot of other stuff that I've been wanting to. I've not really wanted to talk about, but maybe just needed to get out into the air about. Well, number one, let me preface by saying that this podcast in particular is going to be pretty nerdy, very game nerdy actually as well too. It's not to say that I probably won't talk about other things. In terms of my nerd atmosphere, the circumference of my nerddom consists mainly of, I know that's a big word, but basically I'm a nerd for video games. Although I don't play very much anymore, I just play a particular amount of video games now. But I still like the lore of many video games that I've played. I also like the idea of video games in terms of the industry. I actually been following several, not just gamer streams, but news channels. I follow on industry topics and the different news that's coming out of them. Things like E3 and new games being released, even though I don't play any of them. I think 90% of the things that usually come out I don't ever play. There's only just a few things that I really like. I used to be a trading card game guy as well too. I stopped. I had to. It was like a drug to me, and I needed to quit. But that's a different story. It was funny too because like like when you buy cards, you buy them in packs. So it really felt like I had an addiction because I'd go into the store and I'd buy packs. Wordplay. Anyway, yeah, and I don't know other things. A little bit with movies, mostly like the DCU and the MCU right now. If you don't know what that means, you probably aren't one. But the DCU is the DC universe or the DC cinematic universe, and the MCU is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Basically, all those movies that consist of superheroes and heroines and the exploits that they have on the silver screen. So I did watch Civil War, and here's the thing: I actually did want to do my first podcast on my review of Civil War, but I mean it's kind of past. I might wait. I might watch like X-Men, and then I'll give a review on it. Well, which this might be like the little testosterone boy in me, but like only reasons why I want to watch X-Men because I heard it didn't get too good reviews is Psylocke. Psylocke was my favorite character. Probably my first fanboy like what you call nerdy fanboy female crush in comics. Because she's like part Asian or whatever, and like the psychic blade that she wields is kind of cool. I don't know, like there you go. And she's being played by Olivia Munn, who's like I think she's all different parts Asian. So it's like, oh man, that's kind of cool. To be honest. Okay, so yeah, so I'll probably be watching that. Which brings me to I guess another topic. Video game movies, which is actually coming out. One of them that I'm really excited for, which brings me to my topic, is Warcraft. And I'm really excited about this because, okay, here's the thing. I started playing Warcraft back in, I want to say 2010 or 11. I could probably look in my account and it'll probably tell me. But I will say around that time. And it was right before Wrath of the Lich King came out. It was interesting. My friend was playing the game, and I was like, okay, let me try playing it. And then I tried, and I liked it because there was a lot of lore. I liked it because there was a lot of, well, I mean, when you say lore, it's basically stories. I liked all the stories that came out of it. It was, I guess I could take some steps back. I mean, I've always kind of been a nerd for lore. When I was a kid, I tried. It was very deep for me, but I tried going into the Willow universe, which that's a weird one. Like, if you remember the movie Willow with Matt Mardigan, with and then there was like the chosen child. I forget her name, but this was way back when or whatever. I actually tried to follow that string of movies, and not movies, just one. There was just one movie, but I tried to follow the string of lore that came out of it, which is mostly in book form. So I think it was like Shadow Moon and Shadow Dawn were the two movies that came succinctly after Willow came out. Like maybe a couple of years, like no, not even a couple of years, like maybe 4 or 5 years after, though the movie came out. And of course, Willow was a book. So one of the first fantasy depictions of a book coming into the silver screen or the movies was Willow. I mean, of course, there were several others, but Willow was one of the more popular ones. Had a lot of traction back in the late 80s, early 90s. I forget where it came out, but I think it was around that time. A lot of traction. A lot of people really liked that book, and when I was in early high school, I tried to get into it. I was really a big fan of it. It was really cool, like with the whole idea of dragons and things like that. I was never a D&D guy, but I wanted to be. It's just, for me, it was just so much work of like keeping up with the paper. I tried to do a D&D with my cousins, and it was more a D&D-esque inspired game that was centered on the universe of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I got to make my own mutant. I think it was like, it wasn't a turtle. It was like it wasn't a rat. It was, I can't remember. I can't remember which animal that was. But it was really cool, and I played a couple of games with them. But like, to be able to keep track of your record, to keep track of your stats, and then to make the whole to make the whole quest itself, it was so exhausting for me. I was small. I was like still elementary, early middle school, like maybe 6th grade, 7th grade. So for me, it was a little hard. Now come to that, and then of course I'm already in college. I think third, fourth year, and then here comes my friend, um, playing. No, was I already got? No, third, fourth year, I was already done, man. What am I talking about? No, no, that is interesting. What did I play during college? I think it was just mostly CS. You know, that was another thing too. Like card games, like the trading card games, like Yu-Gi-Oh, anime also really got me into the idea of lore. But I digress. All of this to say is like I really like lore and fantasy. That kind of got me into Warcraft and the idea and the lore of Warcraft, because when World of Warcraft actually came out, I remember my cousin was really deep into it, and I saw the game, and then I saw how deep. I'm not gonna name him because it sounds like really bad, because my cousin basically, like, that was his life. He was doing like guild raid runs, and he would spend so little time with the family, like during like family gatherings. He would be like, "Hey guys, I gotta go. I have a guild raid." And I thought that was funny until I started having guild raids. No, you know what? No. That's not true. I would always pug, and that's another term. Pugging is basically like you're just tagging along with someone else's big group. But like I kind of got into 2010, 2011, somewhere around that time, and I liked it because it was like D&D. Except of course the whole game itself did all the stats for you. So when your guy leveled up, like you didn't have to like calculate the stats. You would just have to. Oh my gosh, hold on. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Give me a second. Yo, what's up? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I just got a call actually. The wonders of a live podcast. It's not really live, but I mean it's live recorded. So yeah, so I was talking about all that other stuff about like getting into the lore, and that's what was nice about World of Warcraft. All the stats were done for you, and I like that. I started off as a human priest. That's what I wanted, because everyone was doing damage, and I was like, well, do you have a healer? Just like, no. It's like, well, let me be the healer then. So a female human priest, I named her Ate Baby, which is really funny because when you read it, you can't put spaces or capital letters other than the first part of your name. So it just looks like 8 baby. And everyone's like, did you really eat a baby? I was like, no, it's not pronounced that way. But I also get like a bunch of Filipinos that I play with. He's like, well, hi, Ate. I'm like, oh, hey. I'm not your Ate, but anyway. And then the weird reasoning behind me making a female character is weird. It's like, well, if I'm gonna be staring at a character for hours on end, might as well look pretty. Like, why would I look like at like a grumpy old guy for hours and hours? I might as well look at, I might as well look at something that's a little more pretty and easier to look at. Which is kind of cool because like later on, when World of Warcraft got going, they did this thing called transmogrification. It's a big word for basically saying you can make your clothes look differently. So what they did is they put like a little dressing room so you can dress up your character in whatever clothes that you want while still keeping like the stats of all the armor and the gear that you had. So it was fun. It was kind of fun, and I transmogged my gear and everything else. I looked like this really powerful sorceress, priest, whatever. So I guess that part was fun. That being said, yeah, like the whole time and idea of World of Warcraft was immersing myself into a world, and playing an RPG, a role-playing game. I like that. I really did kind of vibe with that. Later on, of course, I mean, I stopped playing. A reason I bring it up right now too is I actually started playing once again because they're going to be doing all these new things with the game. There was one part of the game, a patch, not really a patch. It's not a patch. It's it's not an upgrade. It's expansion pack called Mist of Pandaria that I bought earlier on, but I never really got to play fully in. I ended up playing it and I loved it because there was a lot of just the playing around of a very Asian Chinese lore with the Pandaren race, and was really cool. I liked it. And I like the lore that they've created. Again, going back in the story. So I did that a lot. Let me see. Let me look at my notes. What we'll talk about. Past experience, current WoW, what now? Oh yeah, well, what now? I actually now I'm playing again. I'm playing with my friends. One of the reasons why I actually wanted to talk about World of Warcraft is the idea of kind of playing within community, playing with your friends, and getting into the whole idea of nerddom. And like, you know what one thing that I really like in terms of what's been happening in the past, I would say about 5 years, is that the idea of being what people would probably genuinely call a nerd or a geek um, has become a lot more socially acceptable. And not even that, it's actually become part of our culture. Whereas before, if you were a nerd or a geek, you were a little bit more of a closet socialite. You weren't social at all, more or less. Or if you were social, it was on very distinct forums, very distinct meetups, or very private ones as well. Now it's become a lot more prevalent, not just to being a nerd, but to kind of embrace that part of our societal community. I like it because, like, you can see it in the movies. Movies is one of the big places where you could actually see the embracing of both nerd and culture. I like how people are just calling it pop culture. Pop culture is basically, it's a good way of saying it. I think pop culture has always been around. I think that just nerd and geek culture have now been included within pop culture, and it's just becoming a more broad term. I like that. Because one thing that a lot of quote unquote nerds and geeks have realized in the past, and probably realize now, and that they will probably agree with, I agree with at least, is the idea that being immersed in such worlds gives you the opportunity to live out great stories. Of course, they're not your own, but it's very similar to like reading a book, or watching a series. I put a note in here that World of Warcraft is my Game of Thrones, because I mean, in terms of the world, it's a lot more expansive. A lot more people die actually in World of Warcraft, I think, if we were gonna do a body count. But at the same time, there's a lot more characters. There's a lot more magic. It's a lot more involved and a lot more distinct to war, rather than distinct to I would say Game of Thrones would be a little bit more of clashes, rather than it would be like total all-out war. And I think that's one thing I like about World of Warcraft, but I digress. The idea is the embracing of great story. And that's one thing that I've found in immersing myself into games, and immersing myself into other geek and gaming like culture type universes, is that you get to experience story. You get to experience your imagination. One thing I liked about World of Warcraft is, yeah, like I could be that priest. I could be the priest that saves the whole crew. Like there was one time, like I don't mean to call it like I don't mean to call this like part of my character storyline, but basically we were wiping. Basically, what wiping is, if you don't know, is when everyone dies during a dungeon or a raid, or like when you're doing something together, and you wipe. Basically, everyone dies because we like someone failed, or everyone failed, or we couldn't beat the boss. So everyone kept wiping at I believe the Argent Tournament, which is a place near in Northrend during the Wrath of Lich King expansion, and it's just a tournament. It's like a gladiator's ring. And then there was one point where I was doing damage. Like I converted my character temporarily to a damage dealer instead of a healer, and the other healer, the priest, didn't know how to do mass dispel, because like there's this one point where you're like, I was Alliance and we were fighting Horde, and just two factions, and we had to fight against each other. But the thing is, you were fighting even though you're playing against a computer, they play like real characters. So that was one of the challenges. So everyone kept getting spells on them, like these continuous spells. So the the healer kept healing, but he didn't dispel any of the spells that were dealing the real damage, and we'd always keep wiping. Like, I got annoyed, and then finally, like the guy that was running, that was running the whole thing is like, I think we need to call this. I think we need to give up. And then I just messaged him. I'm like, don't give up. I'm gonna be the healer. Tell that guy. Like, I got annoyed. I was just like, tell that guy just to do DPS, whatever. I'll do the massive spells. Let's run this one more time, and I'm like, guaranteed we're not gonna wipe. Guaranteed. And like, I just like for me, I kind of felt proud because we got through it and we ended up like doing the rest of the dungeon fine. But I felt good because like I got to contribute to my story. Like I became like the hero because I knew how to use massive spell. Whatever. Like I don't really can tantamount to like, oh man, like you're like really into it. I was like, whatever. Like I don't know what else I did that night. I probably just went to sleep or whatever. But like to be involved in the story, to be involved like in that, like in Conquest, I think that's it's very humanistic in the sense of in the sense that we as humans love great story. That's all I mean. Like, I'm not a humanist by any expense of the term, but just to be human means that we love great story, and that's one thing that I really like about World of Warcraft. That being said, I'm probably gonna be watching the Warcraft movie that's coming out in June. I am really prepared to watch that movie, like so prepared. Going to that movie too, I remember years ago, this is back in like 2010 2011 or so, where they were actually talking about releasing that movie, and I really can't believe that it's here. Like, oh my gosh, there's a movie about World of Warcraft. And on a side note to that, and kind of on a side commentary, a lot of people are looking for video game movies to actually, like, jump off and be successful. A lot of commentators always comment on one of the first movies, which was the Super Mario Brothers one, which was horrible. I remember watching it. I was like, this is not Super Mario Brothers. This is like a bunch of aliens. And Koopa's a real person. It's not like a dragon-looking, like, shell guy. I was like, it was a horrible movie. And I remember Mortal Kombat wasn't pretty good. I liked Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 2 was horrible. I might as well play it again. The game was more enjoyable, I guess, in that sense. There was a conversion though, because when you saw video games going through, especially like with like the higher detail that video games could actually produce now, and like from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, PS3 to PS4, even the onsets of the PC gaming industry, you can see graphics and graphic design. It was basically like 1-to-1 in terms of the quality that you can see in the movies and the quality you can see in video games. So video games basically said, well, if movies can create cinematics for 90 minutes, we can create cinematics for a 60-hour game. And that's what they ended up doing. One thing that really kind of brought me back into the video game industry, at least as a fan of, if not a player, because again, I don't play a lot of games anymore, but at least as a fan of the industry, is the fact that video games have been producing really incredible story. Like the Mass Effect series, although I haven't played it, I have seen like the creation of the stories that they've created. One of the stories that I personally enjoy and I have played through is the Arkham series for Batman. And the way that they created the story between Batman, the rest of Gotham, of course his rogues gallery, and of course like the epitome of his rogues gallery, the Joker. The way that they created that drama, it was incredible. I mean, even the last game that Rocksteady made for Arkham Knight, I mean, I kind of knew what was going to happen, but I really didn't see like the very detailed moments that they decided to pour out into that movie. I mean, I said movie, but what I really mean is video game. And being able to play through the entire series, and to be able to watch the cinematics made me feel like I was a part of that story. I think what I really liked about that as well too is the whole Arkham, the Arkham Knights advertising And the ad campaign between that was the whole idea of be the Batman. And they knew, like, I like how Rocksteady knew. I like how that whole production company knew. It's like, in order for you to understand the story, you have to become the Batman. You have to come into this game being the Cape Crusader. And if you do that, the immersion of the game will be so much more empowering, for in terms of the, like, your pleasure in actually playing the game, and also your pleasure in immersing yourself within the game. The immersion created the great story. But again, digressing from that, just going back into the story, I've always been a big fan of good story, of good lore, and World of Warcraft gave that to me. So one of the reasons why I came back, because I wanted to see, where is this lore coming from. Like, even with the lore that I'm currently going through with what is it called? I know it's not Iron Horde, because that's the enemy, but it's oh man, what's that expansion called? It's Mr. Pandaria, and then the latest expansion. I don't know, whatever, something about the Iron Horde. Anyway, but yeah, like the latest expansion is really, really cool, because I like the idea of I like the idea of lore. I like the idea of what they're doing with this particular lore in terms of the Alliance and the Horde coming together, settling their differences just for a moment, and fighting against this Iron Legion. I like the idea of banding together. Like, I mean, there's this one chain quest, or chain quest. Basically, if you haven't done a chain quest before, it's a series of quests that you do within the game that create a certain story. Usually leads up to a very good something very good in terms of, like, the loot that you gain, or maybe more monies, or something that you'll gain towards the end. That's why you do a chain quest. But what I like about it is it always tells a good story. Like, so one of the chain quests is with Durotan, which is the leader of the Frost Wolves, a horde tribe that lives in the Outlands. And his conflict with his hard-headed, shoot first, ask questions later brother Gunnar. And, like, the whole time during the quest, like, Durotan keeps asking, it's like, can you take care of my brother, because he's being an idiot. Like, he keeps rushing in head first, and then finally comes to a head, because when Gunnar sends his troops out and tries to avenge the death of their father, this is when the Frostwolves encampment actually gets raided by the Iron Horde, and a lot of Horde die. So he comes back, is like, see, I avenged my father, you wouldn't do anything about it. And Durotan's like, do you know how many of our people died because you had to go off and avenge our father? Like, you have to think, if you're gonna be if you're gonna be the leader of the tribe, you have to think about these things. And then Gunnar's is like, nah, you know what? Like, by my right, as one of the as one of the Horde, like, the sons of our father, like, I want to, like, dethrone you. Durotan just, like, without hesitation, he just is like, here's my axe. If you really want the throne, then just kill me and you can have the throne. Because if I'm wrong, and all of this is just, like, revenge, then yeah, maybe I shouldn't be the leader. But if you can have a cool head, then you'll have to trust me. And then, like, in the scene, like, Gunnar is like, you know what? You're right. And then he just throws the axe down. It's like, I'm sorry, like, all our people died because I was being super hard-headed. And then here's a spoiler alert if you haven't gone through the chain quest. So they try to protect this pass, but they need a little bit more time for, like, they're trying to, like, collapse the whole pass so that the Iron Horde couldn't get through, or the Iron Legion couldn't get through. So Gunnar becomes like the bait. And he's like, okay, I'm going to buy everyone some more time. So he runs into, like, the front lines, and he sacrifices himself for the good of like, the rest of the Frostwolf people. And he was like, what the heck? Like, this is story. Like, see, like, he finally avenges himself in terms of his hard-headedness by running in head first for his people, not for himself. I was like, dude, this is good story. I like this. And then there's just more and more story. Like, going back to it again, and I could ramble on all day. I like how the onset of nerddom and geek and gamer culture has really found its really found its place in this particular time, um, in our culture. It's really great because, uh, all in all, whether you're a geek or not, you have to appreciate good story. When it's a good story, you will be immersed. And I'm not one for like watching a lot of TV, even like on demand TV like Netflix and Hulu. I'm still not a big fan of it. But what I like is a good story, and I appreciate like people that get into like really good story. Like I heard The Flash is actually really good. I'm following a podcast with Kevin Smith right now, and all he talks about is The Flash, even though his podcast is called Fat Man on Batman. It's supposed to talk about Batman, but no, he talks about The Flash. It's cool. I like how he's into it. I like other people, other people talk about Game of Thrones or talk about The Walking Dead. And you know what? When I hear that, even though I'm not a big fan, I was like, I can't. There's just too many good stories out there. And then just there's some stories where I don't want to hear that particular story, but I'm glad that there's a story out there. When I hear people say, "Man, have you watched the newest Game of Thrones episode? Have you watched the new Walking Dead episode? Have you watched this new blah blah blah?" I even, you know what? I just saw a trailer. 24 is coming out with 24 Legacy. Like I'm not even a big fanboy of the 24 series, but it's good story. You gotta admit, like, and for me as a writer, it's just really great to hear that people are, when they say like, "Oh yeah, have you watched this latest episode?" What they're really saying is, "Have you seen this good story?" I like that, and I'm really glad that I'm a part of this time in our culture where we can appreciate good story. I mean, that's that's the lifeblood of who we are. I think even, and bring it back to our own faith, I think that's why I love my faith so much, because it's a good story. I mean, what better story is there than a God who loved us so much that he became a man, died for us, but not just that, he rose again. He conquered death itself. That's story. Like even stories right now, even some of the best stories still keep that idea. Like they try to jock and copy the our story, the story of Christ, our Christian story. They still try to copy it to a certain degree within their stories. I mean, it's this whole like Messiah, like they call it like a Messiah complex, or kind of a Messiah storyline within some stories when the hero sacrifices his life for others. Like that story that I talked about with Durotan and Gnar in World of Warcraft. It can be a very kind of Messiah complex type story. And then that's why I love my faith, because I mean, amongst other things, of course, and this is not the main reason why I'm a believer and I'm a Christian, but you gotta admit, the gospel has a good story. Not just that, it has good stories, good writing, and I've always been a fan of good story. So that being said, all of that being said, it's basically my reason of going back into World of Warcraft. I'm not sure if this whole podcast is just to make one big excuse, but I am back and I'm enjoying good story. And I really encourage you guys to look for good stories, whether that is in a video game, whether that is in just like some kind of lore that you read in a book. I mean, definitely if you read it in a book. If it's watching TV or watching a series of shows that create a good story, like Walking Dead, like Game of Thrones, like, well, any of them. There's a lot of them out there. Then, I mean, by all means, enjoy a good story. And if I can go one step further as a writer, learn to make good stories too. Stories either written on paper or written in your life. Make good stories. So that's it in terms of my podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Just a couple of closing remarks. I am going to actually have some events coming up in West Covina at Calvary Chapel Bethel this Saturday. I believe I'm going to be going up around 7 o'clock. So if you guys want to support, come on out there. It is tomorrow. I believe that's the 22nd or 21st. 22nd, I'm actually going to be at the Westminster Church in LA for Remix. In the morning at 11 o'clock. I'm also going to be in Gardena June 11th, as well as I will have the details online. I actually don't have it in front of me, but I will be in Gardena for another event as well too. You can actually get all of this information on my social media websites, mostly Facebook, at facebook.com slash Kuya Paul, or just look for Kuya Paul. Basically, I believe it's Kuya Paul with numbers around it. So just look for Kuya Paul and look for my heart logo, my red heart logo. You could also find me in IG as Kuya Paul Poetry, one word, Kuya Paul poetry.wordpress.com for my WordPress, and also Twitter at Kuya Paul, one word. Also, I have a website if you want to find out a little bit more about me. That's kuyapaulpoetry.com, so you can find me out more over there. But other than that, I always like to end my podcast saying that I am praying for all of you guys, always keeping you in my prayers. If you have any requests for me to pray for, or anything that's you want me to pray over, whether it's family, friends, personal life, you can private message me on Facebook or anywhere here within the comment section of wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it be on YouTube, or I believe it's first going to be on SoundCloud. If you ever have any prayers, and I do also ask that you continue to pray for me in this journey to become more and more of what God wants me to be, whether that's in poetry, in writing, in performing, ministering, or what have you. Just continue to pray for me in my journey as well too. Thank you guys, and thank you guys for listening all the way through this first of many Kuya Paul podcasts. I might just call it Kuya Paul cast. Kuya Paul podcasts. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless.